Commander Jack Wilson stared out the viewport of his small, sleek ship at the massive hulk floating in space beside them. The EE's Invictus was enormous, nearly 2 kilometers long with a bulky, angular design that spoke of an earlier age in human spacefaring. Its dark metal hull was scarred and pitted from battles fought long ago. "Sir, the Vorathi delegation is requesting permission to come aboard," said Officer Tanner from her station. Wilson sighed. "Tell them they're cleared to dock at Airlock 7. This assignment was his punishment, pure and simple. 6 months ago, he'd gotten drunk at a diplomatic function on Proxima Station and accidentally insulted the Regelian ambassador. Now he was stuck babysitting an ancient warship on its final journey to become a museum piece at the Galactic Heritage Center. The Invictus was the last of its kind, a relic from humanity's early days of interstellar travel, before first contact with the Galactic Alliance had changed everything. Built during the Solar Wars when humans feared extinction, these dreadnoughts had been the pride of Earth's fleet. Now they were considered primitive, even embarrassing, compared to the elegant ships of their alien allies. "Commander," Tanner spoke again, "Old Tom is asking if he can start his systems check." Wilson nodded. "Tell him to go ahead." Old Tom Baker was part of the museum preparation team, the only one who actually seemed excited about this mission. The elderly technician had served on ships like the Invictus in his youth and treated the vessel with an almost religious respect. The comm channel chirped. "This is Captain Marin of the Vorathi diplomatic vessel Starlight Seeker. My delegation is prepared to transfer." "Understood, Captain. We'll meet you at the airlock," Wilson replied. 20 minutes later, Wilson stood stiffly as the airlock cycled open. Captain Marin was tall and thin like all Vorathi, with blue-tinted skin and large almond-shaped eyes. Behind her stood 4 other members of her species, all wearing the elaborate ceremonial robes that marked them as diplomatic officials. "Commander Wilson," Marin said with a slight bow, "my delegation is most curious to see this historical artifact of your species." Something in her tone made Wilson's jaw tighten. "The Invictus was the most advanced warship of her time, Captain." "Of course," Marin replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And we are honored to witness its final journey to a proper resting place." The small group made their way through the modern escort vessel and across the docking tube to the Invictus. As they stepped onto the ancient ship, Wilson noticed how the Vorathi delegation looked around with barely hidden disdain. "How substantial," remarked one of the delegates, running a slender finger along the thick metal bulkhead. "Your species certainly believed in using resources liberally." "The Invictus was built to survive," Wilson said flatly, "not to look pretty." The main corridor of the old ship was wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side. The ceiling towered 6 meters above them, with exposed pipes and conduits running along its length. Everything was built on a massive scale, designed for function rather than form. "Our historical records show that these vessels used chemical propellants for their main engines," Captain Marin said, her voice echoing in the cavernous hallway. "How fascinating that you managed interstellar travel with such basic technology." Wilson fought to keep his expression neutral. The Invictus could accelerate to half-light speed and carry enough firepower to level a continent. Marin gave a musical laugh. "My personal shuttle has more computing power than this entire vessel, Commander." They turned a corner and entered what had once been the ship's main command center. Unlike the sleek, minimalist bridges of modern vessels with their holographic interfaces, the Invictus bridge was a maze of physical controls, screens, and manual systems. Old Tom was there, lovingly polishing a brass railing. "Ah, visitors," the old man said, straightening up with effort. "Welcome to the finest ship ever built by human hands." The Vorathi delegates exchanged glances that Wilson easily interpreted. They found the old man's pride amusing, even pitiable. "Tom, would you mind giving our guests the tour?" Wilson asked. "No one knows this old girl better than you do." Tom's weathered face lit up. "It would be my pleasure. Let me show you the weapon systems first. They were revolutionary for their time." For the next hour, Tom led the group through the ship, explaining systems and technology that had been cutting edge a century ago. The Vorathi listened politely, occasionally exchanging whispers and subtle laughs behind their hands. These missile bays could launch 200 kinetic impactors in a single volley, Tom explained proudly as they entered a massive chamber lined with launch tubes. Projectile weapons, one delegate murmured to another. Like throwing rocks. Very effective rocks, Tom said, his hearing still sharp despite his age. One hit could disable a ship twice this size. Captain Marin smiled condescendingly. Of course, but modern shield harmonics would simply deflect such primitive attacks. As the tour continued, Wilson found himself growing increasingly irritated at the Vorathi's thinly veiled contempt. Yes, the Invictus was old. Yes, humanity had been behind many Galactic Alliance species technologically. But there was something about the ship's solid construction and brute force approach that still commanded respect. Deep within the vessel, in a shielded compartment that even Tom's tour didn't visit, ancient systems were running quiet diagnostics. The ship had been in standby mode for decades, but certain core functions had never been fully deactivated. Safety protocols from an era when humans trusted machines less than they did now. As the ship drifted through a nearby nebula, unusual radiation patterns triggered one of those old safety protocols. Slowly, deep in the Invictus's electronic brain, dormant circuits began to power up. Warning algorithms, designed to identify threats that hadn't been seen in a century, began comparing the radiation signatures to those in its database. Back on the tour, the group had reached the engine room, a cathedral-like space dominated by massive fusion reactors that had once powered the mighty vessel. These engines could run at full capacity for 20 years without refueling, Tom said, patting the cold metal housing with affection. Captain Marin nodded politely. Quite durable, though terribly inefficient by modern standards. They built this ship to last, Wilson said quietly. To survive anything and keep fighting. Admirable quality in its time, Marin replied. But thankfully, the galaxy has moved beyond such concerns to an era of peace. As they were speaking, a light flickered briefly on a long-dormant console in the corner of the engine room. No one noticed. The ship was waking up. The small fleet continued its journey through the nebula. 3 ships moved together in formation. Wilson's modern escort vessel, the Hermes, the Vorathi diplomatic cruiser, Starlight Seeker, and between them, the massive bulk of the Invictus like an ancient whale flanked by dolphins. On the bridge of the Hermes, Commander Wilson checked the navigation display. How much longer until we clear the nebula, Tanner? He asked. Officer Tanner tapped on her console. About 4 hours, sir. The radiation is interfering with our long-range sensors, but nothing to worry about. Wilson nodded. The mission was simple. Escort the old warship to the Galactic Heritage Center. Let the Vorathi make their speeches about historical preservation, and then he could get back to real duties. He glanced at the view screen showing the Invictus. Such a waste of a good ship, turning it into a museum piece. Aboard the Invictus, old Tom walked alone through the quiet corridors. The Vorathi delegation had returned to their own ship for the night, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of sleeping on the primitive vessel. Tom didn't mind. It gave him time alone with the old girl. He paused in a hallway, noticing something unusual. A status light on a wall panel was blinking green. That shouldn't be possible. Most of the ship's systems were powered down for the journey. Now what are you doing, old girl? Tom muttered, approaching the panel. Before he could investigate further, the ship's ancient speakers crackled to life with a computerized voice he hadn't heard in decades. Truck Heximeti, ALERT. Unknown vessels, DTCTE. Tom's eyes widened. That's not possible. On the Hermes, alarms suddenly blared. Commander, Tanner shouted. Multiple ships appearing from the nebula. They weren't on our sensors. Wilson rushed to his command chair. Show me. The view screen shifted to show 6 vessels emerging from the colorful gases of the nebula. They were unlike any ships Wilson had seen before. asymmetrical, with what looked like bunny protrusions jutting from black hulls. "They're not responding to hails on any frequency," reported the communications officer. "Wait, they're powering weapons." "Shields up," Wilson ordered. "Inform the Vorathi. All hands to battle stations." Before anyone could react further, bright beams of energy shot from the lead alien vessel. They struck the Vorathi diplomatic cruiser, which had no meaningful defenses. The elegant ship shields flickered briefly before failing completely. "The Starlight Seeker is taking heavy damage," Tanner reported. "Their engines are disabled." Wilson gripped the arms of his chair. "Target the lid ship and fire." The Hermes, though smaller than the alien vessels, was a modern military escort with considerable firepower. Energy weapons lanced out, striking the attacker. The alien ship's hull absorbed the impact with minimal damage. "Minimal effect, sir. Their hull seems to absorb our energy weapons." 3 more beams shot toward the Hermes. The ship shuddered violently as the shields strained. "Shields at 40%, shouted the tactical officer. "One more hit like that, and we're done." Wilson made a quick decision. "Set course for the Invictus. We need to evacuate everyone to the old ship. It's our only chance." "The museum ship?" Tanner asked in disbelief. "It doesn't even have functioning weapons." "It has the thickest hull ever built by humans," Wilson replied firmly. "If we can't fight, we can at least try to survive. Send evacuation orders to the Vorathi ship as well." As the Hermes limped toward the Invictus, Wilson opened a channel to old Tom. "Tom, we're coming aboard with survivors. The Vorathi too if they can make it. We're under attack by unknown forces." Tom's voice came back steady. "I know, Commander." "She knows too." "What are you talking about?" "The Invictus is waking up, sir. She's running diagnostics all over. I think she remembers how to fight." Wilson had no time to question the old man's strange words. Another blast rocked the Hermes, sending crew members flying across the bridge. "Shields critical. Hull breach on deck 3. All hands abandon ship," Wilson ordered. "Get to the escape pods and head for the Invictus." The next 20 minutes were chaos. Escape pods launched from both damaged ships, small metal capsules racing toward the dark bulk of the Invictus. The alien vessels, seemingly content with crippling the 2 modern ships, held position at the edge of sensor range. Inside the main airlock of the Invictus, Wilson helped pull survivors from the escape pods. Most of his crew had made it, along with about half of the Vorathi delegation, including Captain Marin. Her blue skin was now pale, almost white with shock. "What are those things?" she demanded, her earlier arrogance gone. "Why did they attack diplomatic vessels?" "I don't know," Wilson replied. "But they'll be coming for us next. We need to get everyone deep inside the ship where the hull is thickest." Old Tom appeared from a side corridor, moving with surprising speed for his age. "Commander, the ship is responding. Main power is coming online in sections." "That's impossible," Wilson said. "The reactors were cold for decades." "Emergency protocols," Tom explained, eyes bright with excitement. "These old ships had backup systems within backup systems. The attack triggered something deep in her programming." Captain Marin stepped forward. "You expect us to trust our lives to this ancient derelict? My shuttle has more computing power than this entire vessel." "Your shuttle is space dust now," Wilson replied bluntly. "And this derelict has armor plating 3 meters thick in some sections." A loud bang echoed through the ship as something struck the outer hull. "They're here," Tom said. "They're trying to board us." Wilson turned to his surviving crew. "Defensive positions. We need to protect the civilians and find a way to contact Alliance headquarters." Tanner checked her handheld scanner. "No use, sir. These nebula conditions plus whatever those aliens are using. We're completely cut off." More bangs echoed through the ship, followed by the sound of metal grinding on metal. "They're cutting through the outer doors of Airlock 6, shouted one of Wilson's security officers. "Fall back to the inner corridors," Wilson ordered. "We need time to think." As they retreated deeper into the ship, Lights began flickering on along the corridors, old emergency lighting casting everything in a dull red glow. The group made their way to the bridge, where more lights were coming to life on the ancient control panels. "The ship is activating defense protocols," Tom said, watching the screens with wonder. "I've never seen anything like it." Captain Marin looked at the primitive displays with obvious skepticism. "What good are lights? We need weapons, shields." As if in response to her words, a deep humming vibration began to build throughout the ship. The bridge's main view screen flickered and displayed a simple message. "Hostile entities, DETCTE. Defense PROTOCOLS INITIE. Weapons systems. INATEAL. IZING. T Orbing EAs, URESUIT. INITIAL. IZING. Cavual Combat Awakening. In Perojurius, 15 o'clock minutes remaining." Wilson and Tom exchanged looks of amazement. The old man grinned. "I told you," he said. "She remembers how to fight." Another bang, closer this time. The aliens were moving through the ship. 15 minutes is too long," Wilson said, drawing his sidearm. "We need to hold them off until the ship's systems are fully online." From somewhere in the bowels of the massive vessel came a sound like metal tearing, followed by alien screams. Tom's grin widened. "Don't worry, Commander. The Invictus has always had a few tricks up her sleeve. Those boarders are about to learn why these ships were feared across the solar system." On the display, the countdown continued. The ancient warship was awakening. Commander Wilson led the survivors through the dimly lit corridors of the Invictus. The red emergency lights cast long shadows as they moved deeper into the massive ship. Behind them, the sounds of the alien boarders grew louder. Metal cutting through metal, strange hissing voices, heavy footsteps. "Where are we going?" Captain Marin demanded, her earlier confidence replaced by fear. "The Central Command Center," Wilson replied. "It's deeper than the bridge, better protected." Tom nodded in agreement. The old ships had multiple command posts. The bridge was just for normal operations. The real brain is in the heart of the ship. As they hurried through the winding corridors, they passed sealed doors that were now opening on their own. Inside some rooms, ancient machinery hummed to life, lights blinking on control panels that hadn't been touched in decades. "How is this happening?" Tanner asked, looking around in wonder. The power cores were cold. Tom smiled. "These ships were built to survive anything. They have backup systems hidden inside backup systems. The main reactors might be cold, but there are emergency power cells built right into the hull that could last centuries." A loud crash echoed from behind them. The aliens were getting closer. "In here," Wilson ordered, pointing to a heavy blast door that was slowly sliding open. The group rushed through the doorway into a large, circular room filled with old-style control stations. Unlike the bridge, which was designed to be impressive and open, this room was purely functional, a hardened command center buried deep within the armored hull. "Seal the door," Wilson commanded. Tom moved to a control panel and pulled a large red lever. The massive door slid shut with a solid thunk, followed by the sound of heavy locking bolts sliding into place. "That will hold them for a while," Tom said. These doors were designed to stay closed, even if the rest of the ship was torn apart. Captain Marin looked around the room with wide eyes. "What is this place?" "Combat Information Center," Tom replied, moving from station to station. "Checking systems. The real brain of the ship. From here, we could control everything if we had the right codes." On the main display screen, red text continued to count down. "Fuel Combat Awakening. 10:24 minutes remaining." "We don't have 10 minutes, Wilson said grimly. "Those things will be through the door by then." Tom ran his hands over a dusty console. "Maybe we can speed things up. These old systems respond to proper authority. Commander, try your command codes." Wilson looked skeptical, but stepped up to what appeared to be the main terminal. He entered his modern Alliance Navy command codes. The screen flashed. Authorization failed. Obsolete command. Structure DTTCT. It doesn't recognize modern codes, Wilson said, frustrated. A loud bang shook the heavy door. The aliens had found them. Tom. Wilson turned to the old man. You served on these ships. Do you remember any of the old codes? Tom's wrinkled face creased in concentration. It was so long ago, but maybe. He stepped up to the console and placed his palm on a scanner plate. Then he spoke clearly. Emergency Protocol Override. Baker, Thomas J. Engineering Specialist First Class. Authorization Sierra 97 Tango 4. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the scanner under Tom's hand glowed green. The main screen changed. Particular biological matige, DTECT, Rangik in Suefes, Scientific Theol ACTIVTION. Limited command access granted. Tom grinned. Better than nothing. Another bang at the door, louder this time. Metal groaned as something powerful pushed against it. Tom, what weapons do we have access to? Wilson asked urgently. The old man's fingers flew over the controls with surprising speed. Internal defense only right now, but that might be enough. Captain Marin stepped forward. You mean this museum piece actually has working weapons? More than you can imagine, Tom replied without looking up. The Invictus was built during the darkest days of the Solar Wars. Every corridor has defense systems. On a secondary screen, a ship schematic appeared, showing red dots moving through the corridors, the alien borders. I can activate the internal defense grid, Tom said, but I need to bypass some safety protocols. These systems were designed to identify friend from foe. While Tom worked, Wilson organized the survivors. His security team took positions around the room, weapons ready. The Vorathi huddled together, their earlier arrogance completely gone. What are those things out there? One of the Vorathi diplomats asked, voice shaking. Unknown, Wilson replied. They don't match any species in Alliance records. Tom suddenly straightened up. Got it. Internal defense grid coming online, marking all unauthorized life forms as hostile. Throughout the ship, hidden panels in the walls and ceilings slid open. Ancient automated turrets emerge, their targeting systems scanning the corridors. Gas vents prepared to release incapacitating agents. Electromagnets built into the floor plates powered up, ready to activate. On the screen, they watched as the first group of aliens encountered a defense point. The creatures were tall and insect-like, with multiple limbs and elongated heads. They carried strange weapons that glowed with energy. The ship's defenses activated without warning. Turrets swiveled and fired. Not energy weapons like modern ships, but solid metal projectiles that tore through the aliens' bodies. Gas flooded the corridor, causing the creatures to stagger and claw at their breathing apparatus. Primitive but effective, Wilson observed as the aliens fell. Tom nodded. These defenses were designed when humans couldn't rely on energy shields. They had to be effective against any possible threat. The main door to the command center buckled as something powerful struck it from the outside. Despite its thickness, the metal began to glow red-hot in the center. They're cutting through, Tanner shouted. Tom typed frantically at his console, rerouting power to local defenses. The lights dimmed momentarily, then brightened. The countdown on the main screen suddenly accelerated. Fuel combat awakening. 217 minutes remaining. In the corridor outside, automated defenses activated, but the sounds of fighting continued. These aliens were tougher than the first group. We need full weapons control, Wilson said. Tom, is there any way to speed this up more? Tom shook his head. Not without captain-level authorization. The ship needs a proper commander to fully awaken. The door continued to glow brighter as the aliens cut through. Parts of the metal began to melt. Captain Marin stepped forward, her face set in determination. "Your people built this ship to defend your species, correct?" Wilson nodded. "Yes, during our darkest hour." "Then perhaps," Marin said, "it will respond to the current threat to all our species." Before anyone could stop her, Marin stepped up to the command console and placed her hand on it. "Ship," she said clearly, "I am not your captain. I am not even human. But we face extinction together. I humbly request your aid in our common defense." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, to everyone's surprise, a new message appeared on the screen. "Species, non-human, intent, analyzed, 3TAC assessment, mutual, emergency protocol, activated." Suddenly, all the screens in the command center lit up at once. The countdown disappeared, replaced by a simple message. "Fuel combat awakening, NIT. A deep humming sound built throughout the ship, rising in pitch and intensity. The deck plates vibrated beneath their feet. A computerized voice spoke from hidden speakers. "This is the Earth Alliance ship Invictus. Combat systems online. Threat detected. Preparing appropriate response." Tom's face broke into a wide grin. "She's awake. The old girl is fully awake." The door to the command center, now glowing white-hot, finally gave way. A section of metal fell inward with a crash. Beyond it, alien figures prepared to rush through the opening. They never got the chance. Hidden weapons in the ceiling of the command center emerged and fired in a deafening barrage. The aliens fell before they could enter the room. On all the screens, status reports scrolled rapidly as ancient systems came fully online. Weapons, engines, defenses, all awakening to their full potential. The computerized voice spoke again. "Hostile boarding parties detected. Initiating ship-wide purge. All personnel are advised to remain in secure areas." Wilson, Tom, and even Captain Marin exchanged looks of amazement. The beast was awake, and it was angry. The Invictus shuddered as its ancient systems roared to full power. Throughout the massive vessel, lights flared to life, illuminating corridors that had been dark for decades. The dull emergency glow was replaced by bright, clear light that revealed the true scale of the mighty warship. In the command center, Wilson, Tom, and the survivors watched in awe as screens displayed the ship's status. System after system reported ready for action. "How is this possible?" Captain Marin whispered, staring at the displays. The ship was powered down for transport. Tom smiled proudly. "These old girls were built differently. Every critical system has backups that can stay dormant for centuries." The ship was never truly asleep, just waiting for the right moment. The computerized voice spoke again. "Hostile boarding parties detected on decks 3 through 7. Internal defense systems engage. Analyzing enemy weapons and tactics." On the screens, they could see the ship's internal cameras showing the alien invaders. The creatures moved with frightening speed through the corridors, but wherever they went, the Invictus responded. Turrets fired armor-piercing rounds. Hidden traps sprung from the walls. In some sections, the gravity suddenly increased tenfold, crushing the aliens to the floor. "The ship is learning," Wilson observed. "It's adapting its defenses to their tactics." Tom nodded. "That's what made these vessels so dangerous. They were designed to fight unknown enemies. The more they fought, the more effective they became." Captain Marin stepped closer to the main display, her earlier fear giving way to fascination. "These defense systems, they're so different from our modern approaches." "Your ships rely on shields and energy weapons," Wilson explained. "The Invictus was built when humans couldn't make such technology work reliably. We had to use what we had: physical armor, projectile weapons, and clever tricks." On the screen, they watched as a group of aliens encountered a section of corridor where the floor plates suddenly electrified. The creatures convulsed and fell. "Barbaric," one of the Vorathi delegates muttered. "Effective," Marin corrected him. Their energy shields don't stop physical attacks. The ship's voice announced, hostile boarding parties contained, beginning offensive operations. New screens activated, showing exterior views. The alien ships still surrounded them, their strange organic-looking hulls gleaming in the light of the nebula. What offensive operations? Wilson asked. The main weapons have been disabled for decades. Tom's eyes widened as he read the scrolling status reports. Not all of them, Commander. Look. On the screen, diagrams showed massive mechanisms moving deep within the ship, ancient weapon systems powering up. Kinetic launch system online, the ship announced. Primary railguns charging. Point defense grid active. Railguns? Marin asked. Magnetic accelerators, Tom explained excitedly. They fire solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. No energy signature until they fire, and no shields can stop them completely. Wilson looked concerned. Those weapons were decommissioned for a reason. They're too destructive, too indiscriminate. Perhaps, said Marin quietly, that is exactly what we need right now. The screen showed the alien ships beginning to move, perhaps sensing the change in the Invictus. Energy weapons charged on their hulls, glowing with strange colors. Enemy vessels powering weapons, the ship reported. Analyzing energy signatures, countermeasures prepared. Tom moved to a different console and studied it. The Invictus is analyzing their shield frequencies. It's finding weaknesses. The largest alien ship fired first, a beam of energy that would have cut through a modern vessel with ease. It struck the Invictus head-on. The ancient warship shuddered slightly, but held. Hull integrity at 92%. The ship reported calmly. Damage minimal. Armor performing within specifications. Wilson couldn't hide his surprise. That shot would have destroyed any modern Alliance ship. 3 meters of composite armor plating, Tom said proudly. They don't build them like this anymore. Target acquired, the ship announced. Firing solution calculated. Primary railgun 1, engaging. On the exterior cameras, they watched as a massive weapon port opened on the side of the Invictus. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a flash of blue light erupted from the port as a solid tungsten rod, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, shot toward the largest alien vessel. The impact was spectacular. The rod tore through the alien ship's shields, as if they weren't there, then punched straight through the hull from one side to the other. The alien vessel didn't explode. It simply went dark, as its systems failed catastrophically. Captain Marin's mouth fell open. One shot. Kinetic energy, Tom explained. No energy weapon or shield can fully stop a physical object moving that fast. It's old technology, but the physics are still the same. The remaining alien ships began to move, adjusting their tactics now that they realized the Invictus was not the helpless relic they had assumed. Multiple targets maneuvering, the ship reported. Calculating firing solutions for all targets. Point defense grid engaging. Smaller weapon ports opened all over the Invictus's hull. Unlike the massive railguns, these were rapid-fire defensive weapons designed to shoot down incoming missiles and fighters. They began to fire at the smaller alien vessels, filling space with deadly accurate projectiles. 2 more alien ships went dark as their critical systems were hit. Another began to retreat, moving back toward the cover of the nebula. They're running, Wilson said in disbelief. Target attempting to flee, the ship announced. Pursuit course calculated. The deck trembled beneath their feet as the Invictus's ancient engines ignited for the first time in decades. The massive ship began to move, turning to follow the retreating alien vessel. Wait, Wilson said, suddenly concerned. We don't want to chase them. Tom worked quickly at his console. The ship is following its original programming. Pursue and destroy all hostile targets. Can you stop it? Marin asked. I'm trying, Tom replied, fingers flying over the controls. But it's not easy. These old ships were very determined once they decided something was a threat. The Invictus's engines roared louder, pushing the massive vessel forward with surprising speed. On the screens, they could see the fleeing alien ship desperately trying to outrun them. Primary railgun 2. Targeting solution acquired. The ship announced calmly. Firing. Another tungsten rod shot from the Invictus, streaking across space. This one caught the fleeing alien ship in its engine section. The vessel tumbled, leaking strange fluids into space. Target disabled. The ship reported. Scanning for additional threats. Wilson turned to Tom. We need to get control of the ship before it decides to hunt down every alien vessel in the sector. Can you access the command systems? Tom frowned in concentration. I'm trying, but the combat protocols are in full effect. The ship sees these aliens as an extinction-level threat. Captain Marin had been watching the displays intently. Now she stepped forward again. Your ship saved our lives. Perhaps it will listen to me again. She placed her hand on the command console. Ship, she said clearly, the immediate threat has been neutralized. We need to rescue survivors and contact our governments. Please stand down from pursuit mode. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the ship's voice responded. Request acknowledged. Threat assessment updated. Switching to defensive posture, maintaining combat readiness. The engines quieted as the Invictus slowed its pursuit. Tom let out a long breath. It worked. The ship is still alert but no longer hunting. Wilson nodded gratefully to Marin. Thank you, Captain. The Vorathi officer looked at the displays showing the devastated alien fleet. No, Commander. I believe it is we who should be thanking you. And your primitive warship. Around them, the Invictus hummed with power, fully awake and ready for whatever might come next. 3 days passed aboard the awakened Invictus. The great warship drifted at the edge of the nebula, its ancient systems fully active and alert for any sign of the mysterious aliens returning. Inside, the survivors had made themselves as comfortable as possible in quarters designed for a crew from another era. Commander Wilson stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars through the reinforced viewports. The Invictus had sent out distress calls on all frequencies, but the nebula's radiation made long-range communication difficult. They would need to wait for rescue or leave the nebula entirely. Commander called Tanner from a console she had learned to operate. The ship has completed its analysis of the alien technology. Wilson walked over to see the results. What did it find? The aliens, the ship is calling them, the swarm based on their attack patterns, have technology unlike anything in Alliance records. Their ships are partially organic, which is why our energy weapons weren't effective. But the Invictus's old weapons worked perfectly, Wilson noted. Tom entered the bridge, looking more energetic than Wilson had ever seen him. The old technician had been everywhere on the ship these past days, helping to restore systems and teach the survivors how to operate the ancient technology. That's because the Invictus was built to fight anything, Tom said proudly. Energy weapons can be blocked by shields tuned to the right frequency. But nothing stops a tungsten rod moving at near light speed. Just basic physics. Captain Marin entered the bridge as well. The Vorathi officer had changed dramatically since the attack. Gone was the arrogance and condescension. Now she treated the old ship with something close to reverence. Your ancestors were wise, she said to Wilson. They built for survival, not just for show. Wilson nodded. They lived in more dangerous times. Before the Alliance, human worlds fought each other. They built ships that could take punishment and keep fighting. Marin ran her blue-tinged hand along a metal console. Modern ships are too dependent on shields and complex systems. One failure, and they're defenseless. This vessel, she paused, searching for the right words, this vessel would keep fighting even if half of it was destroyed. That was the idea, Tom said. The Invictus and ships like her were built when humanity thought we might face extinction. They weren't just warships. They were survival vessels. The ship's computerized voice interrupted their conversation. Alert. Vessels detected approaching from heading 347. Everyone tensed. Wilson moved to the main tactical display. "Are the swarm back?" "Negative," the ship replied. "Vessels match Galactic Alliance signatures. 5 ships approaching at standard cruise speed. Relief washed over the bridge. Rescue had arrived." "Open communications," Wilson ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of an Alliance fleet captain. "This is Captain Martins of the Alliance vessel Horizon. We picked up your distress call." "Are you the crew of the Hermes?" "Yes, Captain," Wilson replied. "Commander Jack Wilson. We have survivors from both the Hermes and the Vorathi diplomatic vessel Starlight Seeker. We've taken refuge aboard the EA's Invictus." Martinez looked surprised. "The museum ship? How are you even communicating from that relic?" Marin stepped forward into view. "Captain, this relic saved all our lives. It destroyed 5 alien vessels that our modern ships couldn't even damage." Martinez's expression changed to shock. "Destroyed 5 vessels? That's impossible. The Invictus was decommissioned. Its weapons were disabled decades ago." Tom chuckled. "That's what everyone thought. But these old ships have secrets. The Invictus reactivated itself when it sensed a threat. Everything still works. Better than anyone expected." Over the next hour, the Alliance ships approached cautiously. Wilson, Tom, and Marin explained everything that had happened: the ambush, the awakening of the ancient warship, and the devastating effectiveness of its old weapons against the advanced alien threat. Alliance officers and engineers came aboard the Invictus, their faces showing the same mixture of disbelief and awe as they saw the fully operational systems of the ancient vessel. The Alliance fleet's chief engineer, a woman named Rodriguez, followed Tom through the engine room, scanning everything with modern equipment. "This shouldn't be possible," she said, looking at her readings. "These fusion reactors are a century old, but they're running at 98% efficiency. Our modern ships struggle to maintain 95%. Tom patted a massive pipe affectionately. "Built to last. No planned obsolescence back then. Every component was made to work for centuries if needed." In the ship's tactical center, Alliance military officers reviewed the Invictus's battle data with growing concern. "These swarm aliens could be a serious threat," said Captain Martinez. "Their technology seems specifically designed to counter our modern defense systems. If the Invictus hadn't been here, we would all be dead," Marin finished bluntly. Wilson looked around at the gathered officers. "What happens now?" The Invictus was supposed to become a museum piece, but clearly it still has value as a combat vessel. An admiral who had arrived with the rescue fleet considered this. "That decision will be made at the highest levels. But I believe the Invictus has earned its right to remain operational. We may need ships like this if these aliens return in greater numbers." 2 weeks later, the Invictus arrived at the Galactic Heritage Center under its own power, escorted by a fleet of modern Alliance vessels. But instead of being powered down and turned into a static display, the great ship docked at an active military berth. Wilson stood at attention as Galactic Alliance officials and military leaders gathered on the observation deck overlooking the Invictus. The official ceremony had been completely changed from the original plan. "Today," announced the Alliance High Admiral, "we recognize not just a historical artifact, but a vessel that has proven its continued value to all Alliance species. The Earth Alliance ship Invictus will be recommissioned as an active vessel in the Alliance fleet, with a special training mission." Captain Marin, now appointed as Vorathi liaison to the project, stepped forward. "The Vorathi Confederation formally requests that our engineers and officers be included in this training. We have much to learn from this vessel and its design philosophy." The Admiral nodded in agreement. The Invictus will serve as both a training vessel and the first of a new defensive fleet, specifically designed to counter the swarm threat. Sometimes, the old ways are still the best ways. Tom, standing beside Wilson, beamed with pride. He had been appointed Chief Engineering Advisor for the project, his knowledge of the old systems now recognized as invaluable. "Commander Wilson," the Admiral continued, In recognition of your actions during the first contact with the swarm, and your experience with the Invictus, you are hereby appointed as her new commanding officer." Wilson stepped forward, surprised but honored. "Thank you, Admiral. The Invictus has already proven herself worthy of respect. I'll do my best to be worthy of commanding her." As the ceremony concluded, Wilson, Tom, and Marin stood together on the observation deck, looking out at the massive warship. Its hull had been repaired and freshly painted, the Earth Alliance insignia restored to its original glory alongside the new Galactic Alliance emblem. "She's beautiful," Marin said softly, all her previous contempt for the primitive vessel completely gone. "And dangerous," added Tom with a smile. "Just as she was meant to be." Wilson nodded in agreement. The old girl still has plenty of fight left in her, and it seems the galaxy might need that fighting spirit once again. Below them, the Invictus waited, not as a relic of the past, but as a guardian for the future. Sometimes, the old ways were exactly what was needed to face new threats. No one would laugh at this ancient warship ever again.